Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's episode of the Healing Hour podcast. Today, we have a crossover episode. So, we have Dom here from the More Glory podcast. And, Dom, tell us a little bit more about yourself.
So my name is Dom. I've been here in Houston, Texas for since 2015. I'm originally from Lexington, Kentucky. Used to play football. Then I migrated down here. Now I'm currently in the medical field. So just been living life and just pretty much just helping people get to their goals and also networking, connecting them with a lot of great people.
Awesome. I feel like a lot of my guests are transplants. I think all of them are not Houston natives. I feel like so. What drew you to Houston?
I took college visits as a part of a mentoring program that was called BMW, Black Males Working. And essentially it was helping Black and brown boys get exposed to a lot of different realms that they're not used to, statistically, higher ed. So I came down here in Houston. It was really affluent for Black people. My mentor was like my second mom, was telling me how great it is, just the proximity of Black opulence. And so for me, that really sparked something. And so that was my sophomore year in high school. And I declared and I decreed that I was going to be back here. And then that's what happened.
Yeah, that's great. I definitely feel like that's what drew me to Houston as well. It's like I wanted to be somewhere where I knew Black people were doing like really well. And I feel like Houston has the best economy right now.
Right now.
For Black people.
Yes.
For like specifically for young Black professionals. It doesn't get any better than Houston. You can live comfortably, have a pop-in social life. Real estate's booming right now. So yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So as I mentioned before, Dom has a podcast called More Glory Podcast. So can you describe the essence of the podcast? What is it about?
So pretty much the basis of it is biblical manhood. And what does that look like from what God says, from what the culture says? And so we're just really trying to highlight the points, the biblical principles start from Genesis to Revelation. And that's in every facet: faith, finance, family, fitness too as well. And we're just taking just the holistic approach and helping, uplifting men to the greater calling, of which that's the standard. God has given each man dominion. And I think that a lot of things that we see in society today is because men are not living up to the standard of which God has called them to be. So we can look back to a lot of things, and even in today's society where we might see women might be more hyper independent or a lot of different things, and it might be hard for them to date. You can root that back to either fatherlessness or some man along the way not doing what he's supposed to do.
Right.
It's majority of the time, just straight up. And I just have to keep it that real. It's not a male versus a female type of thing, man versus woman. It's not. It's just the reality of things. And so we set the standard. We set the bar because that's the calling on our lives. So the podcast essentially is highlighting those areas so that we can step into a realm of dominion to what God has called men to be.
And I think that's why relationships are looking the way they do right now. And I hate to say it, but it looks like love is losing.
Oh my God. Love is losing.
I see it win sometimes, but it overall, like just from, speaking to, a lot of, the women I know, and, they're all very like, forward in their careers. They're all very independent, all very beautiful, all it is. And the only puzzle piece that hasn't clicked yet is the dating. And I think it's, you touched on, being Christ-led. And I literally think it's the absence of, Christ in dating that is causing us to lose in love. I think love is losing and lust is winning.
Yes. I think we traded love for transaction. So everything's transactional now in these ways. I think women or people naturally compensate for some reason.
Yeah.
So if there is a shortage of men not doing what they need to do, and we're not talking about the physical, what you're attracted to, we're talking about the basis. Oh, okay, this is what I need. Statistically, it's not there. Women outnumber us, whatever the case may be. But in spite of that, they're still not, quote unquote eligible bachelors not doing what they need to do. So women have to okay, I'm gonna get this degree. I'm gonna focus on more on my career. I'm gonna do on me. And so then that's hard to transition into a fruitful relationship when a man that is actually doing what he's supposed to do and he's on his game, he's Christ-led as well. Because when you meet a man that is really bringing everything to the table in the way that God says on every cylinder, a lot of women malfunction. They start twitching and everything. So it is like I think it's lust is coming in because it's like, okay, you look good and I look good, but we don't want to have nothing of substance because it requires work.
Yeah.
And that's what it is. And we work so much hard, so hard on our careers, studying and doing other things, right? That we don't want to do the work on ourselves. That is the hardest thing to do.
It is.
It's doing the work on ourselves. It's tiresome. It can be depleting at time. And I think people aren't willing to do that work on themselves. Therefore, they're not willing to do a work with a partner.
Right. That part, we were just saying before the camera started rolling that, just my efforts in, preserving the integrity of my podcast, of my character, it's a longer route to win. And it's harder to win that way because it's just we just live in a society of like instant gratification. And, junk food is a lot more satisfying than vegetables. So it's like when you're not feeding, yourself all these like toxic things, it's not fun anymore. So people hate to do hard things.
Yes.
They hate to do hard things.
Yes.
And I think working in relationship is one of the hardest things we can do as people is to understand someone else.
Yes. And I think that people got to understand, like, you got to think about the cross and how it's vertical, but it's also horizontal too as well. And that horizontal is to represent the dynamics and the relationship, the interpersonal relationships that we have with each other. You cannot say that you love God, but deny your brother, not love your brother. That's even scripture, right?
Yeah.
And we've got to do better first and foremost. Like, I have to see you as a sister in Christ.
Right.
But before I do that, I have to know my identity.
Yeah.
So therefore, if I know my identity and I know I'm of royal priesthood, I'm a co-heir with Christ. Therefore, this is where I war and where I reign. And then also, if I know I'm a king or a queen, I'm going to approach you in a manner. So even though you might not be operating on that plane right now,
right,
I can still be able to come to you in a respectable manner because I still have the standard of kingdomship within me. I have that mantle on me. And once I realize that, it helps me navigate. Okay, she's a sister in Christ. He's a brother in Christ. A lot of people feel like all men and women can't be friends or different, aspects of dating. No, it goes back to identity.
Right.
And I've had my identity, then we'll talk about the fruits of the spirit. You talk about self-control and everything, because you can be somebody around someone that's attractive. Doesn't mean that you got to make a move or be impulsive or anything else like that, in a negative way.
Which brings me to my next question, right? I know we talked about, in order to have healthy relationships, we have to work on ourselves. So given that, is it more important that we seek purpose before partnership, or is it possible to work on our purpose while still in partnership?
I think it could be both. It's just, honestly, it could be to where God has called you to be. I think that you do have partnerships, and we're not just even just talk about dating.
Right.
It's about people that come along and they partner with you in what God is doing to take you to the next level, right? So we talk about people in the Bible. If you talk about the prophet Samuel and how Samuel anointed Saul, and then also Samuel also raised up King David. It's so important to read the Bible because you see a lot of people are partnering for God's intent for their individual lives.
Right.
Like, they're recognized throughout the book, but there's their partner on the side too as well. And that's how we are too. When we talk about the author and finisher of our faith, God has these other, you could say, supporting cast members in our lives that help us, because people in your life hold keys to certain realms, certain doors that you don't. And we have to be a place of humility to understand it. Like, this person might know more than me. This person might, you got it together a little more. And that's a place of humility and also submission to where, okay, even for a man, it's like I had to learn that I'd be submissive to another man. And that's and it's saying in the form of leadership and humility and understanding that's what God has called us to be. It's for my next level of leadership.
Right.
And so understanding we are partnering for kingdom building and what God has for us. And then that you have to be strategic in your partnership. So if I know my purpose, identifying with Christ, spending time with him and his word to understand what I'm called to do, and then therefore I can partner with the people that are conducive to the kingdom call of my life. You see?
Yeah. I think definitely the most effective way to approach any partnership, just meeting anyone, even platonically, it's leaving your ego aside and seeing what purpose they do serve in your life. It doesn't matter like who I fall out with. It does. I never regret anything. I never regret anything because it's like even if things ended on a bad note, it was like, okay, my first thought isn't, oh, my time was wasted. My first thought is, okay, well, what did I gain from this? What did I learn from this? Where did it take me? You know, and people are vehicles and they're always taking you from A to B. So I can't be mad because something didn't work because it didn't take me all the way there. But it does, you know, it could have redirected me, you know, in ways that I wouldn't have figured that out by myself.
That's good. I think you're right about that. I think you have to have that type of mindset, not regret anything. You can, and I always say these two words, introspective and retrospective all the time. You have got to look inwardly and you also have to look on your past. I think a lot of times too, a lot of people have a hard time forgiving themselves. So we want to hold on to these things. Yeah. And you might have made a mistake, but like you said, I got to look in that last vehicle. I was in a hoopty last one, you know, but now I know I'm a Bentley driver. You see, I'm a Rolls Royce driver. I'm a luxury person. So I got to be more careful about which dealership I go to.
Yeah.
You know, and also too think about, okay, I can't make this mistake again because there's cycles, there's patterns.
Right.
And the enemy watches that too. So why am I making the same mistakes? And a lot of people are caught in it because we're so used to what is comfortable. You know, and the Bible talks about Egypt versus Israel. Like the Israelites wanted to go back to bondage.
Yeah.
And comfortability versus God, here's a land of milk and honey. You know, we cry about the processing and that even in the mistakes, even in the failed relationships, and we don't see the glory of God in that because it could have been a lot worse. You could have had a kid by this person. You could have been married to this person. No telling. And so we really have got to think and be more reflective and taking the time, intentionality about your time to really, really sit in the word in the presence of the Lord so he can download these things inside of you. So you can release and you could understand like there were a lot of lessons that were learned on the way, you know, to help benefit me. Whether, like you said, good or bad, it's still learned, you know, lesson learned.
And redirection is that's a tough one for me is not seeing redirection as failure and actually like, you know, seeing it as realignment instead of failure. Because I am guilty of holding on. Okay, like
let it go.
Literally, I'm very strong-willed. I'm very like hard-headed. Like, no, I'll just do it again. You know, and I've literally bumped my head into concussion before doing that. And I have to remind myself of the story in the Bible. Like, okay, if God tells me if you turn around, we'll turn into a pillar of salt.
Yes, you like Lot's wife, though.
Yes, so I often read that story a lot about Lot's wife, just because I have to remind myself if I do look back, am I going to be okay with being a pillar of salt? Am I going to be okay with going back to where I was redirected? You know, and it's just a matter of like attaching feeling and emotion and missing those feelings and emotions, even to like experiences, right? Friendships, experiences. It always takes me a lot of work to let that go and be like, okay, whatever God has waiting for me is way better than he removed me from, you know?
That's a good question. You know, my pastor asked me like probably the other night, why is it so hard for you to let go of things you can't control? And we have to think about that. And this is a point of vulnerability for me. Like, I've been through a lot of things growing up. You know, I had told them, and I don't mind sharing this at all. I was sexually abused from the time I was 8 to 13.
Mm.
So you think as a child, you don't have any control. You know, I've been through a lot of traumatic things. I grew up in abject poverty, abuse, a lot of different stuff that happened, right? And so now I'm older, I have control.
Right.
You know, so now I know my non-negotiable was like, you know, I'm very big on respect and honor because I didn't get that growing up.
Yeah.
You know, I'm big on showing love and helping others because I didn't get that growing up. And so it's just like, I didn't have that. So it's like, oh, okay. So it's making amends with your past. Like, well, I'm strong willed. Okay, yes, it's okay. I can be strong willed in all these other areas, but there's a fine line between you being bold and courageous versus and thinking that this is what God has for you. But sometimes, like you said, you can be hard headed, knowing it's not.
Yeah.
Obedience versus disobedience. And it's rebellion. And then disobedience sits us back. It is no longer in that vehicle. You're going to be stuck and you can be bankrupt.
Right.
Since, you know, spiritually bankrupt. And you're asking God to pull you out of something that you did in yourself. So I have to go back and do the work like, dang, even if it's the same mistake. Even I got back into it. Like, it looked good, but back to, you know, back to the drawing board. And I think this is where we have to take those lessons seriously and partner with the Holy Spirit. Hey, God, listen, you know, this is my weakness. You know, I have an affinity for this.
Yeah.
Help me. Help me. Right. You know, seriously, he's called the great helper. Seriously. And I cannot emphasize that enough, really leaning on that. And so that we can continue to persevere in the right ways, not from our own willful ignorance, because there's a difference between you not knowing versus like, you know what you're doing.
Exactly. You know? No, and thank you for your vulnerability, period, in this podcast. And I'm glad that this is a safe space for you to share that. And it's very hard. As I mean, like I've talked on some of my episodes. I think the Healing Hour audience knows a little bit about like what I went through and you know, just being in an abusive relationship and you know, like being assaulted myself. So a lot of that it's very hard not to make that into your identity. And it's hard for you like to let go in a sense of things and not to make it part of your identity, but to still keep that as your testimony at the same time.
I understand that you're saying. That's really good.
So it's definitely been something that like with a lot of survivors that I talk to, there's a fine line between making it your testimony and then making it, you know, your personality is like identifying with hurt and pain.
That is, like you said, my people do. And that's not, and a lot of people make it like, you're right. People hold on to trauma. Yeah. Well, you know, my mom, my grandmother, man, listen, I tell you straight up, I've been through a lot worse than what I've come across from people I talk to, different things, right? And I still have a choice. After a certain point, you're not a product of your environment. You're supposed to influence your environment. So I come up out of this background, this muddy, murky, mired background, right? And God places his hand upon me, takes me up out of that. I have a choice at a certain point in my life to where this trauma is either I'm going to use this to fuel me to my prophetic destiny where the Lord wants me to be at, or I can wear it as a badge of honor. You know, this is why I do this. This is why I go so hard, X, Y, Z. And it's rooted in pride and ego.
Exactly.
So that's what it is. And it's also, too, because I'm not willing to do the work to let it go. So these emotions that are still bottled up, a lot of deep-rooted trauma that hasn't even been chipped at.
Right.
It start to manifest and project in other areas of my life. And I can't be a good spouse. I can't be a good friend. I can't do X, Y, Z. Or I'll peak at a certain level. You know, I can't continue to have upper mobility in all the realms of my life because I'm still holding on to that. And I have to let that go. And it's tough. It really is, because I'm learning, you know, me, I'm really learning different things to what letting go is. And it's also to forgiving yourself, even in the point of abuse as a victim. Was I complicit in it? Did I have some part in it? Did I like it? Did I do X, Y, Z? And then that's where the work comes in, where you seek ye wise counsel, where it means you can seek a psychologist, pastoral counseling. You know, people need different levels of therapy. And I'm a huge advocate for mental health services. And I've used it for myself. So really uprooting these things, getting to it. And so you can allow God, partnering to help put those pieces together into where you're still leading, you're still prospering, to where you're not leaking anymore, you're not hemorrhaging. You see what I'm saying? A lot of times too, you think about, dang, I think I'm like a cup drinking water and it just flowing out of me.
Mm-hmm.
There's no sustenance in it.
Right.
There's no nutrition. I'm not retaining anything, but I've given it to God and placed it in His hands. Mm-hmm. Therefore, He can do something with me, so then we can go to the next level.
Right. And also a big misconception too is, once you go through the therapy and you forge a bond with God and you really, start living in your purpose and you leave, the trauma behind, I think it's a huge misconception that you can't also be put right back at square one with healing, because it's not linear. It's hills and valleys, and if anything, it's more full circle than linear. And even in the recent events, even with the situation with the Diddy trial, like as an abuse victim, all of that shit was triggering to me. All of it was triggering from the videotapes and seeing myself in that position. From the videotape was too much for me to watch almost, and then hearing her testimony, and then worst of all was the reaction on social media and the defending of an abuser, and just remembering that I actually never brought my abuser to justice, and all of this she was complacent, she was being paid this and that, and it put me back in a place to where I was like, okay, this was the same dialogue I fed myself at the time, and why I ate at myself so hard about staying in a relationship like that. Because in my head, I'm like, well, either you're going to call the police or you're okay with it. Or if you forgive somebody quiet, so it's kind of on that same level of you're hearing all of these strangers feed yourself this same dialogue that made you stuck in that position. So how do you, what advice would you give to, get yourself out of that triggered space?
Man, I always say, do the work. Mm-hmm. Do the work. There are certain levels of therapy, right, that you go to, we talked about. And there's different ones. It's like, for PTSD, what is more traumatic, to where you might have to be exposed to that. And I know for me, I can speak from my personal experience, is I had a psychiatrist and I also had a psychologist. There's a difference. One's an MD that prescribes medication. The other one's PsyD or PhD. Do your further research on that. But the thing was being able to relive those moments, the smells, the textures of the room, doing all that. And you don't want to, because your brain naturally pushes things behind you.
Right.
And so you relive that. So that trigger was because I haven't dealt with that.
Right.
It's still there on the back burner. You know how you cook and you got your favorite, I got the bottom right, but I'm over here neglecting the noodles or whatever else. Everything on this stove is for a nice, perfect dish. Mm-hmm. And me not focusing on that or doing, spending enough time with the right ingredients, it can ruin it. It won't taste as good. And so the thing is really chipping at that trauma and knowing that it's a process, but being intentional about I'm not going to do this. I'm not going to. No, do those things that make you uncomfortable.
Right.
Because when you're uncomfortable, that means you're about to be fruitful. Mm. And so for me, a lot of stuff, so I'm able to talk about these things. When people talked about little boys getting abused or XYZ, abuse and everything else, it would trigger me. Mm. But it's like, no. You got a testimony, like you said, and even this attributed to what you're doing now, you do a lot of empowerment for women, doing different stuff. Even some of your marketing stuff that's affordable for women to get involved in and active and empowered with no underlying intentions.
Right.
So you got to see how those things you've been through was helping, because you see how common it is. You know how many men too, probably about the same level as being abuse victims as well.
Oh yeah.
And so we have to be more transparent and honest, but that comes with us doing that work, so you get more comfortable with that testimony, and that helps set other people free.
Mm-hmm. And there's also a stigma you know, when it comes to men, you know, coming out about abuse. There's a stigma. Um, I literally heard the other day about this girl on TikTok. She went on a rant and she was like, you know, today I realized that not only do men hate women, but men hate men. And she was talking about the Terry Crews situation. And she was like, Terry Crews really had a vulnerable moment and came out about a time he was sexually assaulted. And all of these men, you know, like made a mockery of him. So it's like, how do we fix that? Like, how do we take these stigmas away? Where does it start? Where do we start to solve that issue to where people can actually come out and out these abusers and actually get the help they need?
I think the main thing is how society is, because you notice when a serious moment happens, you see how some people laugh.
Yeah.
It's a maturity issue.
Right.
And it's also, too, because these topics are taboo. You hear about women all the time. You hear about the feminist movement, the womanist movement. You hear talking about Me Too. All of these things, which are, puts all these offenses that a lot of women have gone through on, major platforms, which is necessary, right? The thing is, with men, it's a taboo topic. Like mental health is just now, being able to emote well, showing emotions is just now becoming a new thing. And I believe stuff are more trendy, and then also, too, men, we're always told to just suck it up.
Right.
Nobody cares about you. You probably liked it. It was a woman that did that. Bruh, what she looked like, laughing and joking, but you're really hurting inside. And then, therefore, that's a whole breeding ground of mismanagement. When I say mismanagement, it's just for a society, we have an obligation to help uplift our brother and sister.
Yeah.
And so we don't manage them well in that aspect, and then they harbor these feelings and these thoughts and these emotions, and then we see later on the news or anything that these people commit suicide.
Yeah.
And it's tough, and it's discouraging.
And then it becomes, oh, we need to talk about mental health.
Yeah,
it's too late now. The person already
exactly
the person already gone. I mean, you're definitely doing, the work, and you're paving the way as well for men with your platform, with the More Glory podcast, to have these conversations, because I think human beings are naturally followers. And if it just takes one person to come out on a platform and talk about it, it sets a chain reaction of, other people who've gone through similar situations. And that's, as we talk about things more and more, it becomes less taboo and more, transparent. And I will say this, I do have very dark humor, so like a lot of my abuse, I will be talking to my homegirls and I will make a joke like, yeah, I remember that one time he threw me like a freaking washcloth across the room, and I'll start dying, and then the whole room is silent. Like that was
not funny. I'm sorry.
I was like, we was in the room like two niggas. Like,
I got dark humor. I'm laughing like that, but yeah, it's the trauma.
It's a trauma response, and I think that is a masking thing too.
Yeah, yes, it is.
Because I use that. I used to. Now I'm doing the work, and I'm able to laugh at the same things I've cried about, which I think is beautiful as well. But before, it was just like a masking thing. Like, I would tell you like the most traumatic story ever, and then like, that was so crazy. And then as I'm around people, they're like, that's not normal. Like, you need to go talk to the lady.
Yes, immediately. I'll set the appointment down.
Like, you should not be laughing. I'm like, just, in my, in my, how I grew up, that's just how we dealt with things. Is like, take it with a punch with the arm. Like, laugh about it. There's nothing you can do about it now.
Yes,
and it's actually, in hindsight, it was very detrimental because instead of letting it out, I was just like masking.
And you understand too, when you navigate, when you speak, when you have the platform that you do, a woman, is when you are seeing these things, it's like also, there's a person in there, place that might been that person that was thrown across the room, or whatever, or you're a victim of abuse. It's to where I got to hone this in and be able to complete the testimony and serious, like it was traumatic, acknowledge this, and move forward, because that will help set somebody else free versus like, okay, dang, this person is laughing about this. So how should I respond? Do I feel like I can come to her about it? She gonna laugh. She gonna joke about it.
Right.
Like, seriously. So I know we laugh and joke. Like, I'm a jokester. I love to laugh. And I have, it's like saying something here.
I don't take
But when it comes
serious.
to like, when it comes to like, other people, I can, you know what I'm saying? Versus like, one-on-one, we giggling or laughing or something like that. Versus if I got to give you some counseling or necessarily, just being open ear for you.
Right. No, it's very important, duality, period. And being able to turn that hurt into, counseling, and not just getting counseling, but being the voice for other people as well, which like again, I love, love, love to hear people with podcasts, with platforms speak about these things. And there's silly podcasts. There's podcasts that talk about absolutely nothing. Which, people need to burn time as well, I guess. But these podcasts that, actually dive into vulnerable topics, I think are so important for the advancement of our people.
Yes, for sure.
So, yeah, I just really love that you're doing that. And yeah, so when it comes to your topics, right? Where do you find your inspiration for them? Is it do you meditate and pray on them first? Are they things that are common themes in your life? How are you figuring out what you're going to say to your audience?
Honestly, guys, like, and I haven't told her this. She's like, so I didn't want to start a podcast. It was God. There are certain things that I did not want to do. There are certain things, that's why I see reading the Bible so important, because there's so much stuff people didn't want to do, but in spite of, by faith, they were being obedience. Abraham is the perfect example of prompt obedience, not delayed prompt. So when God says move, move.
Yeah.
And just the fruitfulness of it ever since I've been obedient, because we talked about that, not wanting to be seen, I can been okay with just, the audio or doing other things, speaking, helping, mentoring, or whatever. But it was God telling me this, because when God places a burden on you, there's a burden for something in this world.
Yeah.
There's something for you to do that. We're kingdom solutionists. Again, kingdom solutionists. So for me, what I usually do, I said, God, what do you want to say? And I had to take myself away, like even before we started. You see how we're flowing in different something than what we have, that's the Holy Spirit. I really have, because he's going to get the glory. I know I can speak well, but I needed to take it on another level to where it's going to resonate with the audience. It's not about me. It's not about us. We get to a certain point of our lives to where we help pull people up. And we go back and help set people free, whether it's a person of abuse, whether somebody's been in drugs, sexually assaulted, whatever the case may be. And so for me, it's really like, God, what you want me to say? I'll really talk to him like that. God, what you want me to say? What you want me to do? And then I'll do an outline, I'll write something. I can't stand writing. So it's pushing me outside of my comfort zone. Yeah. And then I'm giving myself as a vessel so he can flow through me. Because sometimes I'll be in autopilot. Yeah. When you're in autopilot with the Holy Spirit,
right,
it resonates more. So that's my process.
Yeah, you definitely have to be in a state of receiving as well.
That's good. A state of receiving, yeah, that's good.
And yeah, the healing hour as well came to me as a random thought, and you have to really think about those random seeds, that God plants in your brain. Those like downloads that he sends down here. Because another, like I started to get more like into being visible just on social media within like the last few years. Yeah. Like I think like 2019 or 2020 and below, it was like it felt like a humiliation ritual posting anything. Like posting anything was just like, oh, this is so embarrassing. Like even posting selfies was like, let me post and delete. And which I still kind of struggle with now is like I'll do the 24-hour like story thing, but when it comes to on my page, I'm having to bring myself out of my comfort zone and actually like post things and actually speak, because that's a whole different thing. So it's like it's one thing to be seen and it's another thing to be heard. So I think, especially as abuse victims, it's easy to get your voice stifled, and to think that nobody is going to really care if you have something to say or not. So I think that that's so important when you're called to use your voice, to use it for sure.
Yeah, and for you also too, like you talk about you talk about how you just felt that like that inner tug, right? So you talk about also what is the driving factor for you to be this consistent? Because you know there's people there that's wondering like, okay, I want to start this, I want to do this, and it might not necessarily be a podcast or anything on this level. It could be a business, it could be anything else. So what advice would you give someone that's really trying? And then also too, again, the continuity, like you are consistent, like you have content. You see what I'm saying? Most people start something, they don't finish, but you are really doing your thing. So what are some things that you can?
Well, in the beginning, how I was talking about being hard-headed. So sometimes that saves me. Sometimes, like oftentimes I just get smashed in the head. But, being tenacious pays off. And so with my first season, I always say the first season I was literally just like a one-woman show where like you can hear the chairs creaking. I was literally borrowing, shout out to Alana, I was borrowing my homegirl's camera. And figuring out how to use the switchboard of the office that I was working. So I would just like I had to turn into a tech person. I knew nothing. I'm still not a big techie. Right. So it was like, I knew that I had to just get it out. So after the first season, I was like, okay, this is not really, it didn't look clean. It didn't look aesthetic. It didn't look polished. But what it did look is like, okay, it was the stories. So it was the content of the stories. Once I started, and another thing too, I was like, who's going to want to come on my show? And the fear of embarrassment of starting a podcast and failing also held me back for some time before really following through. And when I did my one episode, all of these import of people who had stories to tell. And it's, like God, kind of like God saying, like, they will come, like put it out there, they will come. So that first season, I had a passerby from Atlanta, just to talk on Little Old Me's podcast. And it was a hot little tiny room with one camera. And that was what motivated me, was when I see what it did to other people and how therapeutic it was for them to get their stories out. So that was like, okay, I have to keep doing this, not for me, but, somebody needs to hear this and it's therapeutic. And then came season 2. I was blessed to have a little bit more traction, have a little bit more disposable income as well, and I just invested in the studio.
You invested in yourself.
Yeah,
Yes,
and shout out to OM2H.
Shout out everybody, right? Everybody.
Shout out to them. They helped me turn my vision into reality. So season 2, I seen the progression, right? So it went from having not great lighting, grainy, very terrible audio, to now I'm actually, God gave me the resources to reinvest. And so season 2, visuals were on point, my guests were just expanding. Now I'm at a place to where I'm trying to figure out how I'm going to get my out of town people that want to be on the show, like figuring out how that looks like. So I think it's just constantly trying to, seeing where you came from, and starting all this. Because it would have been easy for me to see that, okay, 2 views on YouTube, all right, maybe podcasting isn't for me. Not to say I have crazy views now, but, just seeing 10 views more than I did last episode is enough to put me in that zone. Like, okay, if I got 10 more people, okay, boom, I could have 10 more people, and just growing like that. So, yeah, just being straight up stubborn with your goals. Like, and it's a gift and a curse at the same time, because, like I said,
I feel like you make a lot of great points, because it's like you see how her concerns pretty much like transition from, oh, what if this, then the third, but when you actually got into the mode, it was different. It's about how can I get these people here?
Exactly.
You see, it's that obedience we talk about, because when God's hand is on it, the provision is there. It's going to provide these things as long as we're moving forward. It's not necessarily the how it's going to get done. It's the trusting. It's the process of that too. And it reveals more about yourself. Like, oh, I can do this. Like you say, I'm not tech savvy at all, guys. I don't know how to work Microsoft Excel. I'm still learning how to turn my laptop on the right way. I'm sure. But the thing is you doing this work and therefore she's educating me on things, right? And so it's good because there are certain people like our predecessors, a lot of different things. Like I said, again, in the Bible, that showed us a way of done these things in a way, and then therefore it can relate it to us too as well. So what you're doing is allowing and empowering people, and it's not always about views for the greater calling. And that's how I feel about my podcast too. It ain't about who's gonna see this. It shocked me, like probably the first 2 weeks, I had over 50 downloads. And it's not like I want to be seeing everything else as of substance.
Yeah.
It's rooted in like, I was just recording with a little mic that I bought from my homie, just in my place, just like they're talking to the mic, super close. And there was this man, one of my homies like, I listened to it 4 times. Thank you for that, da, da, da. So now it's gradually going to get better. It's going to be a, continuity and partnering with great people. Yeah.
Yeah. And honestly, the hardest part isn't even getting started. It's being in the waiting room. And I feel like I'm still currently in that waiting room. Like I know this is not the biggest that God's gonna put my platform. I know there's a bigger pedestal for me, but it's just, being happy with 50 views, then being happy with 200 views, then, just being grateful in every stage of this process. So yes, I want to thank you again so much. And then if you just tell the audience like where to find, your content. Yeah.
Yeah, well, you can follow me on Instagram, Domino D3, DOMINO D3, and you'll see in my biography, you'll see the More Glory podcast, and you can find me on every platform: YouTube, Spotify, iHeart, Amazon Prime, all the platforms, and we'll have a second episode. It's titled "The Weight of the Crown," talking about brokenness and how to rebound from that, being redirected on faith. And I think you guys want to tune in for that. And
yeah, sounds great. Well, thank you so much again. And thank y'all for tuning in. That was today's episode of the Healing Hour podcast. Bye.